Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. My juniors, seniors, colleagues, and everyone. Good afternoon. I'm here back and I'm fine. I hope all of you are fine. Today's topic is a topic of interest. And when times are tough, this topic seems to take the center stage. The name of the topic is risk, and the name of the episode is risk and risk management. People, and my focus is on people. I repeat, risk and risk management. And the main focus is on people. So let's start. Risk is something which I don't like myself. I don't like to discuss the topic risk. But at the same time, I realize it is an inescapable truth of life. What can I do? It's so important to think about risks. Some risks can be thought, some just come. COVID 19. So let's start, let's begin, and let's see where we go. Okay, risk is in every human activity. It only becomes an issue of concern when the going gets tough. This episode will only focus on the risks related to people within an enterprise. So ideally before the going gets tough, the SHRM professionals along with the top management will have to take the initiative to identify the risks and take action. This is risk management. We need to think of risks before the risks can catch us. Obviously, not all risks can be detected. We never thought of COVID 19. At least I never knew what COVID 19 was about. That's my ignorance. Keeping risk aside means leaving things to fate and destiny. This scenario can be very alarming at times. Earthquakes in China and Japan, collapses of buildings in Bangladesh, floodings as a natural disaster, forced closure of mighty financial organizations, bankruptcy, and many more. All these are now a part of life. To tackle these risks, we see organizations have to have the need to develop the crisis management concept, also known as risk management, to recover the disruption as soon as possible. Risk as a topic is now a taught, very much respected and taught in all the major universities around the world. Why? Because it is important. Business may be disrupted but must continue. This is recovery from disruption, and that's what risk management is about. The cost of disruption due to human errors or non human errors at times can be devastating for any enterprise. It makes perfect sense to think about risks from the perspective of business. Risks cannot be ignored, sidelined, taken for granted that nothing will happen, everything is fine, no problems, and so on. No scope for such type of thinking. There is no scope of such type of irrational thinking. Again, let me repeat that. this sentence, risks cannot be ignored, sidelined, and taken for granted that nothing will happen. Everything is fine. There's no problems. This sort of thinking is not at all rational. And that's why I say there's no scope for such irrational thinking and language. Now, what is meant by risk? Every human endeavor or advancement, speaking from a historical point of view, is strongly associated with risk. Risk is uncertainty. Risk is a threat of an uncertainty which may have a positive or negative outcome. Risk is a danger or a threat of danger. So, risk is a danger and also an opportunity. The classical risk theorists have focused more on the perspective that risk is negative, risk is a danger, risk needs to be avoided, eliminated, minimized. All the above statements are true. Also, true is that risk is closely linked to the survival, competition, taking opportunity, and seizing the day. What more can I say? Yes, it is true that risks needs to be eliminated, minimized. We need to focus on risks. Very true. At the same time, risk is very closely linked to survival, competition, taking opportunity, seizing the day. What more can I say? Risk is negative, risk is positive. Please remember, America would not have been discovered if explorer Christopher Columbus would not have taken the risk to explore this new territory, this new world, which we call America. If anyone has an opportunity, please pay a visit to the Greenwich Museum in London. If you have an opportunity, pay a visit to the Greenwich Museums, Naval Museums in London. It's very exciting, very interesting. That's what I thought. In Greenwich, London, where all the naval architectures, all the naval issues are discussed. And that's where we'll also understand how Columbus discovered America by his ship Santa Maria. Or don't forget about Edmund Hillary, another outstanding personality, mountaineer, who along with Tenzing, discovered Mount Everest of the Himalaya on the 29th May 1953. 29th May 1953. When Edmund Hillary actually went to Mount Everest, the highest peak of the Himalaya. It was no easy task in 1953. He took a risk and he took the opportunity. And now he's in history. He's made the big name and he is in history at the moment. There's no doubt about him. He's made history. So he took a risk. Also, let's not forget about Neil Armstrong. I think in 1966 or 1968, landed on the moon. We cannot forget these personalities. They took great risks and many more to discover something, to to explore something new, and so many more. The above facts just to reinstate that risks, and some people will see the risk as an opportunity and will try to exploit the risk. These people that I've just mentioned try to exploit the risk. People have to take risks to move forward. Yes, people have to take risks to move forward. Ask any businessman, he'll say, yes, you have to take risks to move forward. And some risks can be taken, some risks cannot be taken because the outcome is inevitable. And some risks just come unnoticed. Some risks cannot be taken. We know the result: jumping off a plane without a parachute. And we know the result. That's not a risk. We know the result. Some risks come unnoticed, like COVID 19. The world was not prepared for such a risk. It came, and in some parts of the world, it still exists. Not to that extent, obviously. There are two types of risks: physical risks and economic risks, from the perspective of human resource management. Physical risks are those risks which are tangible and visible. Financial risks is about finance and business. Risk is closely associated with the following concepts. Please remember, risk is associated with uncertainty, risk is associated with outcomes, risk is associated with consequences, risk is associated with probability. I repeat, risks, this concept is closely linked to the following concepts: uncertainty, outcome, consequences, and probability. Here, I would also like to I would like to add that high risk leads to high gain. I'd like to add this statement: high risk leads to high gain. Low risk leads to low risk. But again, not always. Risk is now an established discipline and a branch of knowledge. There are another two types of risks: non-entrepreneurial risks and entrepreneurial risks. Non-entrepreneurial risks means those types of risks associated with fire, flooding, natural disasters, pollution, etc. Entrepreneurial risks, on the other hand, is about incorrect forecasting, wrong strategies, poor planning, and poor leadership and poor management. Entrepreneurial risks is about poor leadership, poor management, incorrect forecasting, wrong strategies, etc. On the other hand, non-entrepreneurial risks is about flooding, natural disasters, fire, etc. Also, I can add fraud. It's a risk. There's no doubt about it. Being in the HR professionals, we have to be aware fraud and corruption. And to some extent, it's non-entrepreneurial. At the same time, it may be entrepreneurial, but it is a risk. I have to look after my human resources in the organization against corruption and fraud. It's a risk, there's no doubt. Why give it one opportunity, if at all possible? Both these views are very important that shape the way risk is perceived. which is not entrepreneurial, at the same time entrepreneurial. The role of risk management. All risks are not the same. Develop risk policy and strategy. Insert risk policy in all the activities undertaken by the enterprise. Delegate responsibilities. Form a committee, which may be called risk management committee, chaired by a suitably qualified and experienced leader with extensive knowledge in risk management. Clarify the roles and responsibilities of members of the committee. The following diagram will show where it begins from. All begins with an understanding of the activities of the organization. I repeat, all risk begins from analyzing the activities undertaken by the enterprise. Once I know the activities, then I can draw out a strategy and policy of risk management. A third part is when I have identified and when I've got a policy and procedure and system in place, I can test those policies, procedures, systems, whether it's working or not. The fourth is the evaluation of what we have done in relation to risk management as far as possible. So, understanding what the organization does, what activities it's involved in, formulating policies and procedures related to the activities in relation to risks, preparing the whole organization through the risk management committee to be alert related to risks. This is the implementation and testing of what we have, what we know. And the last is evaluation, the feedback monitoring of the whole system of risk management. The risk management policy will include the importance of risk management must be recognized. The importance or significance of risk must be recognized by the top management. Who is the risk management committee? Who is in the risk management committee? It's very important. We have a committee, but who is in the committee? Who chairs the risk management committee? Key areas of the enterprise are identified. The roles and responsibilities are clarified. Statement from the top management. What risks, what risks to the business have been identified and are referred to as the critical elements to the business. There are core areas, employees, there may be core employees, non-core employees. Core employees are, we have to deal with core employees, may have to deal with core employees a little differently than the core employees because the core employees have more skills, knowledge of the product. And if they start leaving, it leaves the company in great risk. We have to take care of those. We cannot expose the enterprise to such type of risks as far as possible. SHRM professionals must realize that nearly all our activities are very closely connected to risk. For example, recruitment and selection is closely related to risk. You might ask me how. Take, for example, when I recruit somebody I try to thoroughly check the background of the person, which is called vetting. It goes through the process of vetting where I'm trying to find out unexplained gaps in the potential employee's career history. Unexplained gaps. Who knows what the person was doing, what he was up to? I don't know. I'll have to verify those areas. Those are the risks areas. And if I do not take the initiative of checking his background or her background and giving him an appointment letter, what happens? If something goes wrong, I can be blamed. If something goes wrong, for example, a theft, who has recruited the person? It's me. How have you recruited him? I just recruited him on face value. I'm finished. There's nothing I can say. There's nothing called face value in recruitment and selection. We are playing a game, and the game must be very correctly associated with risks. We must always consider risk in recruitment and selection. How do I know whether his performance will be excellent or not? Past performance will not indicate future performance. Recruitment and selection, terms and conditions of employment, there is a risk involved, health and safety, conflict management, politics, and groupings within the enterprise can also cause risks for the organization. Too much politicization, too much groupings can cause a problem. That's a risk for the enterprise. Dealing with discipline and grievances, building trust can also be a risky game. Workplace overall environment, motivation can also be an issue related to risk, and so on. Promotion, reward management, all these areas are exposed to risk. We must be very, very careful. Now we need to identify in advance what to do when the crisis hits the floor. The checklist at this stage. What do we check? I've talked about risks and risk management. Now I'm going to talk about the general checklists. Clear procedures in place. Effective communication. Plans to resume interrupted activities. But the top management will have to convey the message. Business must continue. A few noteworthy points. Have all risk management committee members undergone any sort of risk management training? Is the risk management chairperson or leader suitably experienced and qualified in relation to risk management? Is there a place of counseling management within the enterprise? Have the fire drills, for example, taken place according to law? It's just an example, fire drills. Are all the contact numbers of the risk management team known by all the members of the enterprise? These are very important issues. How important is staff safety? We must understand the concept of duty of care. As an organization, we have a duty to look after our employees. This is called duty of care. And this is particularly related to the tort law. Law, again, is divided into a number of parts. For example, criminal law, civil law, act of limitations. But this is another type of law which is called tort. and duty of care and negligence belongs to tort. Also, remember the concept of risk and risk management is closely associated with concepts like image, goodwill, reputation, and we have to think about the issues. If I think about a long term success of the enterprise. Now, there are another two types of risks. When I'm talking about risk, I'm talking about now scanning of risks. Here I'm talking about the scanning of risks by the members of the committee. There are two types of scanning, micro scanning and macro scanning. The micro scanning will be about policies, procedures, systems, employee surveys, motivation of the workforce, customer satisfaction, employee turnover, or employee exists, or even more serious, if core employees start leaving. And that means the focus should be then on revisiting the retention policies, lack of discipline, non inspiring culture, low trust, etc. We have to scan these symptoms and find out whether there is a risk or not from a micro perspective. Here I'm scanning the risks. Remember, I'm scanning the risks. And risk is divided into micro and macro. Micro is about policies, procedures, systems of the organization, motivation of the organization, turnover within the organization. How happy are the employees to be with the organization? That's about micro scanning of risks. Now, when I'm talking about macro scanning, that means politics of the country will have to take into consideration. We'll have to take into consideration the politics of the country. Sometimes, sometimes I've come across where politics seems to exist in every type of organization, and it is to some extent state sponsored. I repeat, state sponsored politics seems to penetrate into every sort of organization. That's also very risky. You'll not be able to make a neutral judgment because it is politicized by the state. It happens. It's not unusual. I can give examples. Maybe I'll give it later. But yes, it exists. It is not good for the organization and it is harmful. I'm talking about politicization of organization sponsored by the state. International affairs, the potential tension between dollar and UN, all these are threats. For example, I repeat, the potential tension between dollar and the Chinese currency, which is called yuan. Please accept my apology if the pronunciation is wrong. I've said yuan, but I'm not sure of the right pronunciation of Chinese currency. But that's another confusion in the world. It is a tension. But for the time being, dollar is there. Dollar, all the transactions are through dollars to some extent, whether it's strong or weak. It's the currency of the international market. Economic economic issues like inflation, increases in VAT, public spending cuts, salary and wage, export and import, supply and demand of labor, high unemployment, loans, startup supports, the pandemic, etc. All these issues are now the economic issues, whether from these economic issues, I'll try to find out where there are risks involved. The social issues, for example, ethics, what is right and what is wrong. Legal issues, new laws. It's a threat if I do not know the laws. Environmental issues, all the above issues can disrupt the business, can really disrupt the business. Politics can, international affairs can, economic issues, social issues, legal issues, environmental issues, all these have the potential to disrupt business. Also, yes, technological issues can also disrupt business to a great extent. It is absolutely necessary to state that the top management will have to give risk a strategic importance, develop a risk committee, allocate roles and responsibilities, regular risks assessments, monitor and evaluate enterprise activities against risk criteria. Think of a risk management strategy is not another fancy concept. No, my friends, risk management strategy is not another fancy name or a fancy game. It's not a fashion, it's the reality. All depends on the product of the enterprise. Existence of an enterprise depends on the realization of the top management that risks cannot and should not be taken lightly. The existence of an enterprise depends on the realization of the top management that risk really cannot be taken lightly and cannot be ignored or never should be ignored. That's why big companies have contingency planning to tackle risk. Contingency planning means to take steps if something goes wrong. The contingency planning will involve three key issues: technical issues, business related issues, people issues. The contingency planning is about technical issues, the information technology or confidential information that needs to be protected. Business issues, protecting the operation and customer needs, for example. People issues is about motivation, happiness, confusion, employee turnover, etc. In a contingency planning, we have to think about this. We have to think about these issues very, very seriously. And that's what we call contingency planning. Conclusion: the more we try to understand risk from the perspective of SHRM, the more we will see new concepts coming into the market. For example, contingency planning, succession planning, having in place a plan A, plan B, plan C, etc. I have also focused on having in place a risk management committee led suitably by a qualified risk management practitioner. The concept risk has been discussed. Remember, and non-entrepreneurial risks, physical risks, and economic risks. Risk management committee needs to scan what? I've just said what to scan. Scanning can be into two parts: micro scanning and macro scanning, to see how much risk the organization is exposed to. Risk is about uncertainty and unpredictability. Risk is about uncertainty and unpredictability. In order to exploit risk, The top management may introduce cross functional and rotational roles within the enterprise where role holders must visit other departments for a fixed time and then come back to the original position. Introduce a culture of risk awareness among employees and stakeholders. I repeat, introducing a culture of risk management or risk awareness among employees and stakeholders. Risk is also about a mindset, and that is thinking of risk and what to do when the risk really hits. There are also some parts of risks which come suddenly, and very few people know about these risks. For example, COVID 19. Trust me, I never knew about this. It just came of change. But the concept of risk must be embraced by the top management. Thinking will develop a kind of mindset where employees and stakeholders will stay on the guard. The simple message for the top management: business must continue. We must recover from disruption as soon as possible. That is the plan that needs to be tested. And also, I've discussed what to do in the earlier part of the episode. Keep in touch with the latest research on risk. Also, be informed that institutes like the Business Continuity Institute, London, can be very, very useful. I repeat, the institute like the, the the Business Continuity Institute in London can be a source of knowledge for practitioners. Just before leaving the topic, one thing must be remembered: thinking and a mindset on risks and risk management depend on the subject matter of risk. Risk involves being aware and alert. This is the mindset comprising of awareness and being alert that I'm trying to advocate and promote through this episode. I have just come to an end. My friends, colleagues, juniors, seniors, brothers, sisters, stay calm, stay happy wherever you are. Have a nice day. I'll be back with another interesting and exciting topic very soon. Take care, my brothers and sisters. Bye bye.